Hey guys, welcome back to more malicious compliance stories. In this video, I inherited the property of my late grandparents, but now a sleazy HOA lawyer insists that my inherited property must join the HOA, else they will put a lien on my house and sue me. Let's dive right into the video. And the title story starts like this. This whole story started, as many do, with a death. Or rather two, my grandparents passed away within a few months of each other, leaving me and my wife their property. It was not a huge shock, they were old, had lived full lives, and we knew this was coming. What was a shock though was the property itself. My grandparents were, well, let's call them original. They bought a 5-acre plot of land way outside the city back in the 60s. They built a small, sturdy but decidedly not fancy house on it. They had a massive garden, some chickens, and a big ugly metal barn for my granddad's various projects. They were basically homesteaders before it was cool. The problem was the city didn't stay way outside. Over the decades, the city metastasized. A developer bought all the land around them, and a massive master-planned community called Ascent Estates sprung up. Not the real name, but I don't want to reveal my identity. The developer had apparently tried to buy them out dozens of times, but my granddad, in his infinite and stubborn wisdom, always told them to go pound sand. He liked his land and he was not moving, so the developer just built around him. The fancy paved roads of Ascent dead-ended at his dirtway. The backyards of about 15 different executive homes abutted his property line. I knew the neighbors didn't like them, and we would hear stories at Thanksgiving about the HOA busybodies, leaving passive-aggressive notes on their gate, which my grandma would promptly use as kindling, but since they were never part of the HOA, there was nothing the HOA could legally do. Then they died. My wife and I inherited the property as is, and as is was rough. The house needed a new roof. The barn was leaning, and the 5 acres were mostly overgrown weeds. We were not really sure what to do with it. I mean, we couldn't afford to build a new house, and selling it was complicated because of its odd status. We decided to spend a few weekends just cleaning the place up, trying to make it less of a biohazard while we figured out the legalities, and that's when we got the letter. It was from a law firm on behalf of the Ascent Estates Homeowners Association. It was dense with legalese, but the gist was simple. Now that the original owners were deceased, the protective covenant of Ascent Estates was no longer in abeyance. I had to look that up, by the way. It claimed that our property was, and always had been, subject to the CC&Rs, which stands for Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions of the HOA, but that the HOA had graciously deferred enforcement out of respect for my elderly grandparents. The letter stated that we were in violation of approximately 30 different rules. Article 4.2 Unapproved exterior paint color, peeling yellow. Article 5.1 Failure to maintain landscaping, the 5 acres of weeds. Article 6.3 Unapproved outbuildings, the giant metal barn. And Article 6.5 Prohibited livestock, the chicken coop, empty for years but still standing. And by the way guys, whether it is chicken coop or coo, I don't care because that word is my nemesis. Anyway, Article 9.1 Unapproved fencing, the chain link. It concluded by saying that we had 14 days to pay the initial membership fee of $2,500 plus the first month's dues of $300 and provide a rectification plan for all violations, or else the HOA would pursue all available legal remedies, including liens and daily fines. And yes, to be honest, I was floored. I called the number for the law firm and got the man who would become my nemesis, the HOA lawyer. Let's just call him Sleazeball. I tried to be polite. I explained that my grandparents' property was never part of their development and was never subject to their HOA. Sleazeball had this incredibly smug, condescending tone. He informed me that my grandparents' property used a 40-foot stretch of private road, the cul-de-sac that touched our driveway, for access, and that maintenance of this road was paid for by HOA dues. "Your continued use of this private amenity," he said, his voice dripping with slime, "constitutes implied consent. The original deed contains a prior use covenant that activates upon transfer of title. It's all in the county records. You are required to join. If you fight this, I will personally see to it that my legal fees are tacked onto your property lien. Pay the fee or I will see you in court. Your choice." I hung up and immediately called an actual competent property lawyer, and my lawyer spent a week digging through the county records, and the news was not good. He is not exactly wrong, my lawyer said, sounding frustrated, but he's not right either. It's actually a gray area. The developer and your granddad had some easement agreements for utilities that are tangled up with the original HOA charter. And Sleazeball is using this one ambiguous clause about successor owners and access. It's a total bully move and he's betting that you won't fight it. So, we fight, right? I said. We can, my lawyer replied, but I'll be honest, this is a 50-50 shot. It could take up to 2 years. It will definitely cost you a lot in legal fees, and probably even more. Sleazeball knows this and he knows that you're grieving and that you just inherited this problem. He's counting on you folding. I was enraged. They were using my grandparents' death as a predatory opportunity. My wife and I discussed it for days. We did not have infinite money to throw at a lawsuit we might lose. Selling the property as is with a massive lawsuit attached would just be impossible. We were well and truly screwed. We were sitting on the rundown porch of my grandparents' house looking at the weeds, feeling defeated. What if we just pay it? My wife said quietly. What? And let them win? Let them tell us what color to paint this house? No, she said, a slow smile spreading across her face. What if we comply? He insists that we have to be members. Okay, let's be members. If we are paying $300 a month, I want to know what we are paying for. I want to see the books. I want to go to these meetings. If they're going to force us to be part of their stupid club, let's be the most annoying members they ever had. A plan began to form. The next day, I overnighted a cashier's check for $2,500 to Sleazeball's office, along with the $300 in HOA dues. I included a letter and said, "Dear Mr. Sleazeball, after careful consideration of your legal position, we have decided to comply with your demand to join the Ascent Estates HOA. We accept all rights and responsibilities of membership, but please send our welcome packet including the full, unredacted CC&Rs, bylaws, financial statements for the last 5 years and the schedule for all upcoming board meetings. We look forward to being active and engaged members of the community." I got a very short, smug reply simply confirming my membership and a link to a 350-page PDF. The lawyer probably thought he had won. He had no idea what he had just unleashed. I am not a lawyer, but I'm a very patient man who knows how to read. So my wife and I spent the next 2 weeks with highlighters. We read every single word of those 350 pages. We read the CC&Rs and the bylaws, and we read the HOA Beautification Board HBB guidelines. We cross-referenced everything. It was essentially a masterpiece of terrible, vague, and contradictory bureaucratic language. It was clear the board and their lawyer had just copy-pasted rules over the years without ever proofreading. But in that mess, we found our weapons. The first test came quickly. We received another letter, this time from the HOA president herself. Let's call her Carrie. Carrie was the Satan of the neighborhood, and I could tell from the tone of her letter that she had been waiting for this moment. "Welcome to Ascent," she began. "We are so glad you've decided to clean up your grandparents' old property. As your first order of business, the HOA board has formally rejected your existing structures. Per Article 6.2, the chain link fence is an unapproved material. You have 30 days to demolish the barn and remove the fence." I checked my notes. Article 6.2 said all outbuildings must be approved by the HBB. Article 9.1 said all fencing must be approved by the HBB. It did not say that they were banned, it said they had to be approved, so I filed an HBB application. Application for barn to repaint existing structure heritage red in accordance with Article 4.5 allowing for traditional farmhouse colors. Application for fencing to remove existing chain link fence and replace it with a new fence. The barn application was immediately rejected. The HBB has denied your application. The structure must be removed. The fence application, however, was approved. Approval is granted for removal of the non-compliant fence. Replacement fence must adhere to Article 9.2. The fencing must be constructed of wood or vinyl, neutral in color, white, beige or natural wood, and may not exceed 6 feet in height. Carrie and the board clearly thought I would just tear down the old fence and leave the property open, which would make it easier for them to complain about my weeds. They forgot one crucial detail. My property was 5 acres and it was surrounded on 3 sides by their pristine backyards. So then I called a fencing contractor. "I need a 6-foot-tall solid panel natural cedar privacy fence. How much?" The contractor came out, took measurements and whistled. That's a lot of fence, man. That's over 1,800 linear feet." I know, I said, and I needed built to exact HOA specifications. Here are their rules. The quote was astronomical, but it was less than the money I would have spent fighting them in court. Do it, I said. It took the crew weeks. The neighbors were curious at first, but then horrified. The 1,800-foot, 6-foot tall solid wall of cedar went up. It completely blocked the lovely open pastoral views that 15 of the most expensive homes in the subdivision used to enjoy. Their backyards, which once looked out over an open, if weedy field, now stared directly at a solid, imposing wooden wall. My phone started ringing. It was Carrie. She was screaming, "What have you done? You cannot do this. This is a monstrosity. You are blocking everyone's view." "I'm sorry, Carrie," I said with faux politeness, "but your own HPB approved it. It is 6 feet tall, it's natural wood, and it's 100% compliant with Article 9.2. I'm just following the rules. Isn't that what you wanted?" We are fining you. We are suing you." "For what? For following the written approval I received from your committee? I'd love to see Mr. Sleazeball argue that in court. By the way, I see your house has a purple color. Article 4.3 limits doors to white, black or natural wood stain. I'll be sending a formal violation notice to the management company, by the way. Have a wonderful day." Click. I was now the neighborhood pariah. This was fine though. I didn't move there to make friends. I was there to be left alone. The HOA, led by Carrie and egged on by Sleazeball, declared war on me. They sent me a cease and desist on the fence. I sent them back a copy of their approval letter. They then sent me an immediate demolition order for the barn, and I sent them a letter asking them to cite the specific article in the CC&Rs that allows the board to demand demolition without a member's consent outside of it being declared an unsafe structure by the county, which it was not. They were stuck. And by the way, guys, if you would have found yourself in the same situation as OP with an overreaching HOA trying to force you to join their little country club or mafia or whatever you would call it, what would you have done? Would you have taken the same approach as OP? I mean, it's quite risky, but obviously it's also kind of brilliant. And while you're at it, if you still enjoy these HOA/malicious compliance stories, then please don't forget to like the video and leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. Anyway, the HOA had forced me into the club, and now I was using the club's own rulebook against them, and they hated it. Sleazeball's response was to start fining me for absolutely everything. $50 visible trash can, it was out for 10 minutes on a non-pickup day. $100 noxious weeds, the field inside my new fence. $200 peeling paint on the house, which I was in the process of getting quotes for. And basically, they were clearly trying to fee me into submission. But this was a tactical error. It just made me dig deeper. As a member in good standing, I paid every fine, and under protest on time, the bylaws gave me the right to review the HOA's finances. I sent a certified letter pursuant to Bylaw Article 12, Section 4. I'm formally requesting a full unredacted copy of all financial statements, balance sheets, receipts, and active contracts for the last 24 months. The management company tried to stonewall me. Sleazeball sent a letter saying that my request was overly broad and burdensome. I sent back a reply saying, Bylaw Article 12, Section 4 does not provide any modifiers for broad or burdensome. It simply states that a member has the right to inspect the books. My next request will be a legal motion to compel. Please provide the documents. A week later, I received a massive Dropbox link. It was thousands of pages of invoices, bank statements, and contracts, and they clearly just dumped it all on me, thinking I'd never get through it. They underestimated how petty I am. My wife, who is a bookkeeper by the way, and I spent the next month of evenings with spreadsheets, and then we found it. The HOA had a landscaping contract for $20,000 a month. This contract was to maintain the front entrance, the little park, and the grass on the private roads. The company on the invoice was so-called Carrie's Beautiful Borders. I did a quick search on the state's business registry, and the sole proprietor of Carrie's Beautiful Borders was Carrie, the HOA president. Carrie was paying herself $240,000 a year of the HOA's money. And then I dug deeper. The bylaws, Article 8, Section 2, no board member may engage in self-dealing or hold any contract with the association without A. full disclosure to the membership, and B. a competitive bidding process with at least 3 bids. So not only was there no competitive bidding process, but she had used her emergency presidential power to approve the contract without a board vote during a landscaping crisis 2 years ago. But that was not even all. The legal fees. Oh, the legal fees. Sleazeball's firm was billing the HOA an average of $15,000 a month for years. He was on a massive retainer plus billing hours for every single violation letter he sent. He was a parasite and the board was his willing host. My fight with him over the fence had cost the HOA $8,000 in legal bills alone. He was profiting from the conflict he had created. I had found the rot. But I was not done. Something about Sleazeball's original threat, the one about the prior use covenant, still bothered me. He was so sure that I was bound to the HOA. And why? I went down to the County Hall of Records. I was not interested in my deed anymore. I was actually interested in theirs. I pulled the original documents for the Ascent Estates development. It was filed in 3 phases. Phase number 1, the first 20 houses. This included Carrie's house and the house of 2 other board members. Phase number 2, the next 30 houses. And phase number 3, the final 40 houses. I started pulling the deeds for the phase 1 houses. I pulled Carrie's first. I read her deed and I couldn't find it. I read it again. There was no mention of the Ascent States HOA, no covenant, no subject to. Her property was not legally part of the HOA. I pulled the deed for the other 2 Phase 1 board members, but the same thing. I pulled the deeds for Phase 2 and Phase 3, and there it was clear as day. This property is subject to the covenants, conditions and restrictions of the Ascent Estates Homeowners Association. My heart was pounding. The developer had messed up. When they filed the paperwork for Phase 1, they forgot to attach the HOA covenants to the deeds. They realized their mistake and fixed it for phases 2 and 3, but it was too late for phase 1. The entire HOA board, Carrie, her treasurer, her secretary, were not legally members of the HOA they were running. They had no authority, no right to be on the board, no right to vote, no right to fine me, and no right to cash my checks, and no right to hire Sleazeball or Carrie's beautiful boarders. They were a fake board. So essentially, they were running a successful and profitable organization, counting property values, with absolutely zero legal standing. And Sleazeball, the lawyer, just had to know. A lawyer dealing with an HOA's covenants would have to check the deeds. He was not just incompetent, he was complicit. He was helping a fraudulent board maintain power so he could keep cashing their, or our, checks. Sleazeball's fatal mistake was forcing me to join. Because my property, thanks to his legal bullying and the acceptance of membership form he made me sign, was now a legal dues-paying voting member. In fact, I was one of the few people in this fight who was, according to the bylaws which I now knew by heart, a member could call a special meeting of the membership with a petition signed by 10% of the legal members. This was tricky. I had to go door to door to the phase 2 and phase 3 houses. I did not lead with the fraud. I led with the money. Hi, I'm your neighbor from the old farmhouse, the one with the fence. Yeah, that's me. Look, the HOA is actually forcing me to be a member, so I reviewed the budget. Did you know the board is paying the HOA president $240K a year for landscaping? Did you know they are paying the lawyer over $150,000 a year? I'm calling for a special meeting to demand a full audit and a vote of no confidence. Will you sign? Will you sign? It was like lighting a match in a dry forest. People hated Carrie, but they were too scared of her and her lawyer to do anything. All they needed was a leader. I got the signatures in one afternoon. I filed the petition and the board was legally required to hold the meeting. They scheduled it for a Tuesday night in the community center, clearly hoping for a low turnout. I photocopied my evidence. I made a PowerPoint. I was ready. The room was packed. Every phase 2 and phase 3 homeowner was there, buzzing with anger. Carrie and her 2 cronies were at the front table looking smug. Sleazeball was sitting next to them, looking like a vulture. Carrie opened the meeting with, "We are here because this man," she said, pointing at me, "has made some ridiculous, slanderous accusations. We're gonna let him speak and then our legal counsel will address his concerns." I stood up, I walked to the podium, I plugged in my laptop. "Good evening, my name is OP. You all know me as the guy with the fans." The HOA, through their lawyer, Mr. Sleazeball, insisted that my inherited property must join this association. They forced me to pay $2,500 and $300 a month, and they did this, I said, looking at Sleazeball, by citing covenants they claimed were attached to my deed. So I complied and I joined, and as a member, I exercised my right to review our finances. Here's what I found. Slide 1, a picture of Carrie's beautiful boarder's contract. Slide 2, a screenshot of the estate business registry showing Carrie as the owner. Slide 3, the bylaw about self-dealing. The room exploded. People were screaming thief and resign. Carrie was white as a sheet. Sleazeball jumped up. "This is slander. These are confidential documents. This member has violated his duties." "I haven't," I said calmly. "The bylaws state that I can review the books. They do not state that I cannot share my findings with other members." But that, folks, is not even the worst part. I advanced the slide. Slide number 4, a scan of Carrie's property deed. "This," I said, "is the deed for your president's house. I got it from the county records office. It's public information and you will notice something is missing. There's no mention, none, of the Ascent Estates HOA." I put up the next slide, slide number 5, a scan of a Phase 2 deed. And this is your deed. See that line? Subject to the covenants. I put them side by side. I checked the deeds for every Phase 1 house, and that includes every single member of your board. None of them, not Carrie, not the treasurer, not the secretary, are legally members of this HOA. Sleazeball was trying to shout over the sudden noise. "This is preposterous. This is a procedural misunderstanding." More like procedural fraud. I held up my hand for quiet. "It's not. This is fraud. This board has been illegally exercising authority it does not even have. They have been levying fines, collecting dues and spending your money all without any legal right. They are in the eyes of the law a rogue organization." I turned to Sleazeball. "And you, Mr. Lawyer, you either knew this and were complicit in the fraud, collecting $150K a year from an organization you knew was illegitimate, or you are so incompetent that you failed to do the most basic due diligence of checking your client's founding documents. Now, which is it?" He just gaped at me, his slimy composure totally gone. "So here's what we are doing," I announced to the room. "You insisted I must be a member. I am. You insisted I must follow the bylaws. I am. And bylaw Article 3, Section 1 states that all board members must be members of the association. Carrie, you are not a member. You are removed from the board effective immediately. Mr. Treasurer, you are not a member either. You are removed. Mrs. Secretary, you are not a member either. You are removed. This HOA," I said, gesturing to the fuming residents of Phases 2 and 3, "is now under the control of its actual legal members, and our first order of business is a motion to terminate the contract of this law firm effective immediately. All in favor?" Every hand in the room, except for the Phase 1 phonies, shot up. It was a sea of righteous anger. Sleazeball grabbed his briefcase. "You will all be hearing from me," he hissed. "Oh, I promise you will be hearing from us," I shot back. We ended up holding an emergency election. I was reluctantly elected as interim president, and my wife, gleefully, was elected interim treasurer. Our first act was to hire my lawyer, using the drained but not empty HOA reserves. Our second act was to send a massive evidence packet to the district attorney, detailing the fraud and embezzlement by Carrie and the old board. Our third act was to file a formal complaint against Sleazeball with the state bar, and the fallout was nuclear, albeit a bit slow. Sleazeball was in fact disbarred, and the Bar Association's investigation found that he had been forum shopping with predatory HOA practices for years. My case was just the one that finally brought him down. Carrie and her 2 cronies were arrested, and the DA hit them with multiple charges, including wire fraud and grand larceny. Carrie's beautiful borders was dissolved, and the court placed a lien on her house to pay back the $240,000 she had stolen. A class action lawsuit was filed by the actual members against the management company who had ignored their fiduciary duty and the now deposed board. My wife and I ran the HOA for exactly 6 months, just long enough to clean up the mess. We held a new vote. We have 2 options, I told the members. We can keep this HOA with the $300 a month dues and use it to actually, fix the pools, maintain the roads and so on, or we can dissolve it. I presented my final motion, a motion to formally dissolve the Ascent Estates Homeowners Association, release all properties from its covenant. It passed 98% in favor. It took another year of legal paperwork, but it is done. The HOA is gone. Legally, it no longer exists. The covenants are void, and the Phase 1 homeowners like Carrie, who were forced to sell her house to pay legal fees, now live on a normal street. The Phase 2 and 3 homeowners are free. They can paint their doors whatever color they want. Their property values actually went up because there's no HOA anymore. And me, I still have my grandparents' 5-acre property. The cease and desist orders are meaningless and the fines are gone. My 1,800-foot, 6-foot-tall solid cedar fence, it is still there. It is beautiful, and my neighbors have planted ivy on it. We get along fine now. And the next one is an amazing malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. It is titled, "All Client Communication Must Go Through New Software." My company rolled out a horrible new project management software. It is slow, confusing, and our clients hate it. My manager is the only one who likes it, and he caught me using email to help our biggest client and then got mad. He told me, "You must use the new software for all client communication, no more emails. If it's not in the software, it didn't happen." 2 weeks later, our biggest client, an old school CEO who hates the new software, emailed me for an urgent quick call. Instead of just replying, I logged into the new software, created a new task for her, and wrote my reply there. Then I replied to her email informing her of my manager's new policy that requires me to move our conversation to our new software. Then I sent her a link to see my message and scheduled a call. About an hour later, our company's CEO calls me. The client had called him directly, furious that I was refusing to help her and sending her bureaucratic links. She was threatening to pull our contract. I explained I was just following the manager's direct order. The CEO told me to call the client immediately and handle it. A new email went out an hour later from the CEO. "Please use whatever communication method is best for the client. Client satisfaction is our top priority." Manager's new rule did not even last 2 weeks. And the next one is titled, "Provide an offer? Don't mind if I do." A few recent stories on here reminded me of a friend of mine that we will call Dave, shared with his permission. Dave was working for a company for a few years, liked it there, liked the job, liked everything but the pay. His company pretty much only gave raises if you had a competing offer. Dave's boss knew this and advised him as such, since he wanted to keep Dave. However, Dave did not want to interview anywhere else. However, the supervisor had hired him, we will call him Bruce, and he had moved on to another job. Dave then called Bruce and told him the situation, and Bruce was like, "I've got an idea. I will send you an offer letter. How much should you be making?" Dave was making 85K at the time, and based on his skills, experience, and so on, should have been making about 110K, so that's what he told Bruce. Bruce said not to worry and that he'd take care of it. Dave then gets an email from Bruce, doesn't look too hard at it, and tells the supervisor the next day that he has an offer and was wondering if his job would counter. Dave forwards the letter from Bruce, and Dave's boss gets back to him offering him 130K to stay. As it turns out, Bruce, because he didn't actually need to budget for this position because it was fake, put 125K in the offer letter. He also had a knowledge of Dave's unit budget, having formerly worked there, and knew that they would afford it to keep Dave. That's how Dave maliciously complied with a fake offer later to get a raise. Postscript, Bruce moved to a third company about 5 years ago and has since hired Dave there in an executive role he's doing well in. The next one is a petty revenge story, and it is titled, "Tenant in the apartment building I live in forgets fob daily and I shut them out." I know this sounds more stupid and dumb, but there's context behind this. I, 21 female, live in a locked-style apartment building. We cannot let other tenants in at all if they do not have their fob, and if there's no staff at the apartment, there's this one tenant, age unknown M, that would always forget their fob and would rely on them getting in by staff or by security letting them in. But today, there was no staff or security at the desk at all, and I was heading out to get a drink at the local gas station. The person did follow me to it, and back where we crossed paths when I was walking back, he asked me if I had a smoke. I told him I don't. He's younger than 21, between 20 and 18, and he tried following me, so I shut the door right before he could walk inside. This morning when staff came in, he yelled at them about my actions as I was walking out, and all I said before I left was, "They want you to remember your fob," and walked away with a smile on my face. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you again tomorrow.